Hello everyone, you're listening to Alternative Revelations with Linda Emanuel. And today is podcast number 29. And first I've got to read this disclaimer before I get started. I am not a doctor, nor am I a licensed practitioner. I cannot give medical advice. Therefore, these podcasts are for informational purposes only. And today, I'm not going to do taurine. I'm going to do that the next podcast. And taurine is a very important topic, which you will later discover if you listen to it. But this one's going to be about a worldwide epidemic of cancer and disease. And I'm going to do something that I love. I like to research, and I've looked up a lot of statistics. Now, this all sounds like doom and gloom, but actually I'm going to give you solutions and ways to protect yourself from getting these diseases and ways to get well. So on with the podcast. I'm going to start off way back in the 50s when I was a child, and very little was heard about cancer or disease. Now, it was around, but I only knew of one case of multiple sclerosis, somebody who died of it, a young woman, and that was the only case I ever heard about somebody having MS. And now we're in an epidemic of multiple sclerosis. Now again, cancer and disease are infections, and there's a reason why there is an epidemic of cancer and disease. And I think I went over that in another podcast, but I'm going to do it again. Now, in the 1980s, I got a divorce, and I wanted to be able to support myself independently. Not that I'm a feminist, but I went back to college at the age of 36, and I wanted to be a nurse. And I took classes at junior college, and one of the classes I had to take was English Comp 1, and we had to write a thesis. And I was really interested in nursing, of course. So at the time in 1988, when I went back to college, there was a nursing shortage. And I researched it. And a thesis is you make a statement and then prove why that statement is correct. And my statement was there is a nursing shortage. So I started doing research about the nursing shortage and why it was happening. And this was why at the time in 1980s. Now, I'm going to go back a little bit further before I start. Now, the government unleashed, and I didn't know it at the time, the government unleashed the bioweapon mycoplasma on the U.S. population, and for that matter in the world, in the 70s and 80s. And people really weren't starting to get sick yet because it was unleashed under controlled circumstances, and cancer and disease, or mycoplasma, are spread through the sharing of body fluid. And also, when you are sitting on an airplane and you are breathing recycled air, you are getting doses of mycoplasma. But in the 80s, it hadn't really emerged yet, the worldwide epidemic of cancer and disease. So now back to my story about my thesis. So I found out that in the mid-80s, the government changed policy regarding Medicare rules to hospitals. No longer would they pay for people being in the hospital for a week for tests. Now, outpatient surgery became prevalent, like appendicitis. You might be in the hospital overnight or just outpatient. Same way with gallbladder. People were going home from surgery with tubes in them to receive home health care. Now, other insurance companies followed this policy. Now, hospitals were in a dilemma because people in the hospital were really sick. Now, this is also when the hospitals went to the 12-hour shifts for nurses because they had to cut back. They had to close wings to tighten their belt to save money. So nurses now were on floors with really sick patients who needed a lot of care. And nurses were burning out and quitting. And this was why there was a nursing shortage because of the Medicare cutbacks on payments to the hospitals. Now let's fast forward 25 years. Hospitals are booming. They're the biggest growth industry in this country. The jobs, all the good jobs are in the healthcare industry. The drug companies are going bonkers, making money hand over fist. Now, again, this is because over the 30 years, the sexual revolution changed people's morals where they were bed hopping and they were spreading mycoplasma people to people. Also, if these infected people rode on airplanes, then they were breathing out mycoplasma, and people on airplanes were getting infected by breathing in recycled air. Now, one thing about mycoplasma, it takes some kind of a trauma or an emotional or physical trauma or extreme stress to bring it out or to activate it. And what this does is the body, when you have a trauma, it goes into fight or flight stage and releases a lot of sugar. And this changes the pH of your blood. And mycoplasma monitors three things: your immune system, the oxygen level in your body because it is anaerobic, and the pH of the blood because bacteria live in acidity. So the most common way to activate a mycoplasma infection is through a trauma. Also, mycoplasma attack you where you are genetically weak. That is what you have inherited from your ancestors. So nobody really, unless you're in the same family, share mycoplasma symptoms. Somebody might get diabetes. Somebody else may get depression. Another person may get cancer, breast cancer, colon cancer, lung cancer, pancreatic cancer, brain cancer, etc. And also, mycoplasma attacks you where your tissue is damaged. And that is why you should listen to the 5G podcast, because 5G damages tissue. 5G will not cause cancer, but it will set us all up for cancer or disease. So again, mycoplasma attacks you where you are genetically weak, or it will attack damaged tissue. So that is why we are in, at this point in time, a worldwide epidemic of cancer and disease. Now, a lot of the underlying issues are people have a sugar-based diet, and mycoplasma absolutely need sugar to live. And everything we eat processed has sugar in it. That includes bread, fruit, candy, soda. A lot of people drink soda, and this is probably the most dangerous thing you could eat of all, or drink at all, because diet soda contains aspartame, a neurotoxin, which poisons brain tissue. Plus, soda is highly acidic. It's probably the most acidic thing you can put in your body. Plus, it has a lot of sugar in regular soda. Now, I've repeated this. Michael J. Fox was the Pepsi spokesperson when he was younger. And of course, I guess they gave him a lot of Diet Pepsi. And in his autobiography, he stated that he drank 24 cans of Diet Pepsi every day. He probably substituted Pepsi for water, as many people do. Now, I don't know what trauma triggered Michael J. Fox's infection, but he ended up with Parkinson's, probably because he poisoned his brain tissue. And again, mycoplasma attack you where you are genetically weak. And it will also attack damaged tissue, as in the case of Michael J. Fox's damaged brain cells. And another good example of where mycoplasma attack damaged tissue is smokers. Smokers who smoke cigarettes damage lung tissues, and when they stop smoking, they are vulnerable to a mycoplasma infection. And for your information, just listen to, is it safe for you to stop smoking? It's not about smoking. It's about why people get sick right after they quit smoking. It's very informative. And to prove that we're in an epidemic of cancer and disease, I looked up a lot of statistics. And when I wrote the third edition of Alternative Revelations and finished it the third edition in 2015, I had these statistics. Now I'm going to give you some comparisons from 2015 to the present. Now in 2014, Alzheimer's, 1 in 8 people age 65 or greater have Alzheimer's, which means more than 5 million Americans had Alzheimer's in 2013. And every 71 seconds, a new case of Alzheimer's is diagnosed. And Alzheimer's is the 6th leading cause of death in the U.S. In 2013, $203 billion was spent on Alzheimer's health care. Now I'm going to give you some statistics that are current. And supposedly there's 5.8 million people that have Alzheimer's in this country. Worldwide, 44 million. Only 1 in 4 people, they say, have been diagnosed. And I thought the number one country with the most Alzheimer's would be America, which was actually second. But the countries with the highest rate of Alzheimer's are Western Europe, which includes England, Ireland, Spain, Portugal, France, etc. These are the countries with the most Alzheimer's, more than America, which is second. And the country with the least amount of Alzheimer's is the area called Sub-Sahara in Africa, which means all the countries below the Sahara Desert in Africa. That is the country with the lowest amount of Alzheimer's. Now, in the United States, in 2013, it was estimated that $203 billion was spent on Alzheimer's. Then in 2017, an estimated $259 billion was spent, and $605 billion was spent for Alzheimer's care worldwide. Currently, in the U.S., Alzheimer's is the 6th leading cause of death. Now, Alzheimer's, on the Alzheimer's information site, it takes about 4 to 8 years to die of Alzheimer's. Once diagnosed, that is. Now, the following statistic may be because women outlive men, but 2 out of 3 are women who have Alzheimer's. Now, Africans and Hispanics are the most likely people to get Alzheimer's, which was really surprising. And the state with the most Alzheimer's is Mississippi. It has the highest rate of Alzheimer's, and the lowest state is New York. Now, 30% of Alzheimer's have also gotten heart disease, and 29% have diabetes. And this makes sense because both heart disease and diabetes can be caused by mycoplasma. Now I'm going to give you some people, famous people, who have died or who have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Of course, Glenn Campbell, Rita Hayworth, Ronald Reagan, James Stewart. Really interesting, I didn't know that. Charlton Heston, Charles Bronson, Etta Jones, Peter Falk, Burgess Meredith, Rosa Parks, Norman Rockwell, Eddie Albert, Sugar Ray Robinson, Vincent Minnelli, who was married to Judy Garland, Imogene Coca, Otto Preminger, Dana Andrews died in 1992, Perry Como, Wow, I didn't know all these people had Alzheimer's and died of it. James Stewart's kind of curious. His wife died first, and he was supposedly very much in love. Now I'm just guessing here, this might have been his trauma why he died after that. I need to look it up and verify how long after her death he died, but this might have triggered his mycoplasma infection and he got Alzheimer's. Sure enough, I just looked it up, and his wife died in 1994, and he died 3 years later in 1997. So, this might have triggered his mycoplasma infection, which could have been manifested by an emotional trauma. And an emotional trauma can be the loss of a job, can be the death of a loved one, could be a car accident, could be a divorce. Anything that causes the body to go into fight or flight. Now, the next statistic I'm going to go over is fibromyalgia. And back in 2014, when I did statistics on it, it stated 10 million Americans had fibromyalgia. And in 2017, 12 million people had fibromyalgia, which means 2 to 4% of the U.S. population. And 90% of people suffering from fibromyalgia are women. And I'm going to add a little comment. Back in 1951, our own government did a bioweapon test with mycoplasma. They put it in mosquitoes and they unleashed it on the town in Florida named Punta Gorda. And those were the first cases ever documented of fibromyalgia. Now the next one is diabetes. Now diabetes in 2012 cost America $245 billion for diabetic health care. In 2012, 271 million people worldwide had diabetes. Now in 2017, compared to 245 billion in 2012, $327 billion was spent on diabetic health care. And in 2015 in America, 30.3 million people had been diagnosed with diabetes, which was 9.4% of the population. And according to statistics, 1.5 million people each year are diagnosed with diabetes. And again, mycoplasma can cause diabetes. It robs you of your cholesterol, and therefore you are unable to make hormones. Now I'm going to list some people, famous people who have or died of diabetes. Sharon Stone, Vanessa Williams, Mary Tyler Moore, who died of diabetes, Peter O'Toole, Jackie Robinson, Patti LaBelle, Dick Clark, Paula Dern, H.G. Wells, Billie Jean King, B.B. King, Johnny Cash, Larry King, who also had cancer, Thomas Edison, George Lucas, Drew Carey, Elvis Presley, I didn't know that one, Halle Berry, Tom Hanks, author Anne Rice. Now I'm going to mention lupus, and not much has changed as far as statistics, which I think are a little false. Now when you test positive for lupus, you have to have a certain AMA marker in the blood. So many times people have many infections going on in the body, but it's a real simple diagnosis when you have the AMA marker in your blood. Like in my case, I had MS symptoms, I had Crohn's, I had fibromyalgia, I had depression, I had rheumatoid arthritis, but I tested positive for the AMA marker in the blood, so they slapped that diagnosis on me. So again, back in 2015 and 2019, presently 1.5 million people have lupus, which I think is a little bit wrong. Now 90% of people who have lupus are women, and 5 million people worldwide have lupus, and usually it occurs between the age of 15 and 41. Now I'm going to give you a list of people, our celebrities, who have been diagnosed with lupus, and some of these surprised me. Lady Gaga, Selena Gomez, Michael Jackson had lupus, Toni Braxton, the singer Seal, Ferdinand Marcos, who was the leader of the Philippines, died of lupus. Ray Walston, who died in 2001, had lupus. And Ray Walston was in My Favorite Martian. Now I'm going to bring up multiple sclerosis. Multiple sclerosis is where the mycoplasma attack the myelin sheath, which wraps around your nerves, and myelin sheath consists of cholesterol, and mycoplasma need fat to replicate. Now back in 2015, when I did the statistics for multiple sclerosis, it was estimated that 400,000 Americans had MS. Today, the statistic is 1 million people have it. And back in 2014, every 30 minutes, a new case of MS is diagnosed. And according to the statistics, presently 2.5 million people worldwide have MS. Now I'm going to name you some people, some famous people who had MS. Of course, Montel Williams, Richard Pryor, Annette Funicello, Alan Osmond, one of the Osmond brothers, and Terry Garr, who played in Young Frankenstein, who is still alive with it. And the next statistic I'm going to do is about Parkinson's. Now, 10 million people worldwide have Parkinson's, and 4% were diagnosed before the age of 50. And it's the second highest age-related disease after Alzheimer's. Now, men are 1.5 times more likely to get Parkinson's than women. And 60,000 people are diagnosed each year with Parkinson's, and currently $25 billion a year is spent on the care of Parkinson's. Now in the United Kingdom, every hour somebody is diagnosed with Parkinson's. Now the list is very lengthy for Parkinson's, people who are living with it or who have died of it. And one of our hometown heroes in St. Louis is Jack Buck, who died in 2002. Also, Neil Diamond announced in 2018 that he had Parkinson's and was retiring from touring. Now, Deborah Kerr, who was an actress, who's one of my favorite actresses, she died from Parkinson's. Jim Backus, Mr. Magoo, he died of Parkinson's. Alan Alda, he has come out that he has Parkinson's. Of course, Michael J. Fox, he has been diagnosed with Parkinson's. A surprise here was Robin Williams. Robin Williams' wife revealed that Robin had been suffering from Parkinson's, but just not had come out with it. Of course, Muhammad Ali died of Parkinson's. Johnny Cash had Parkinson's along with diabetes. Billy Graham, who was around 100 years old, died in February of 2018 of Parkinson's. He was diagnosed in 1992. Casey Kasem in 2014 died of Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. Estelle Getty died in 2008 of Parkinson's. Linda Ronstadt got diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2013. She's 69 currently. Vincent Price had Parkinson's along with emphysema. Janet Reno was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 1975, and she is currently 80. Long time she's had that. George Wallace, the governor of Alabama way back, died of Parkinson's. And what might have triggered his mycoplasma infection was the attempted assassination of him while he was running for president. Again, trauma. Now, besides disease, mycoplasma can cause cancer, and one of the most common cancers in women is breast cancer. And the statistics back in 2014, they estimated that there would be 232,670 new cases diagnosed, and currently they're just estimating 260,000. And again, it's the most common cause of death among American women. And I'm going to list you some names who have survived breast cancer: Sheryl Crow, Suzanne Summers, Olivia Newton-John, Jacqueline Smith, Diana Carroll, Kathy Bates, Kim Novak, Carly Simon, and Bridget Bardot. Now I'm going to give you some statistics on Lou Gehrig's disease, or ALS. And again, mycoplasma attack you where you are genetically weak, what weaknesses you have inherited from your ancestors. Now, ALS is where the mycoplasma doesn't attack the myelin sheath. It actually attacks the motor neuron directly, which is genetically weak. Now, the current statistics for Lou Gehrig's disease: 5,000 people will be diagnosed each year, 15 new cases each day. 93% of the people affected by Lou Gehrig's disease are white. Now, this is a very interesting statistic I found, was 2 times more likely to develop Lou Gehrig's are military personnel. Now, this could be because they are exposed to nerve gases and toxins from vaccinations, and also chemical toxic weapons that damage nerve tissue. Now, I am going to add this, that there are 2 types of ALS. One is genetic and one is acquired. And it makes sense that these soldiers who were exposed to nerve gas poison, this poisoned their motor neurons, which made them vulnerable because mycoplasma attack damaged tissue, and the nerve gas damaged these soldiers' nervous system motor neurons. And the life expectancy of somebody who has been diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease is only 2 to 5 years, and there is no known treatment. And I'm going to disagree there. There is hope for people with Lou Gehrig's disease. And again, the sooner you get treated, the more likely you could recover. Of course, once mycoplasma damages your tissues, it's very difficult to reverse damage. Now, I'm also going to get into depression, which mycoplasma can cause. Mycoplasma gets in the endocrine system and uptakes your cholesterol. Therefore, you cannot make hormones and you cannot make dopamine and serotonin. You have difficulty sleeping. You get severely depressed. You could be manic. You could be bipolar. It's all mycoplasma. And usually people who have depression usually have other symptoms of a mycoplasma infection. Now, here's some statistics from 2017. 17 million adults, 7% of the U.S. population, 18 or above, suffer from depression. 1.9 million children, 3 to 17, have been diagnosed with depression. Now, it's very interesting, this statistic. 64% of people who are suffering from depression have heart disease, and 25% of cancer patients express depression. People who have been diagnosed with AIDS suffer from depression. 50% of Parkinson's people state they are suffering from depression, and 1/3 of diabetic patients are suffering from depression. Again, it's all related. Same organism, just different places in the body. Now, just out of curiosity, I looked up kidney disease. And I really do believe that the mycoplasma can attack you anywhere in the body. And I'm just going to bring up a little story. I used to take call ride in St. Louis when I was not driving. And the drivers, we always converse. All the drivers are usually very friendly. And I asked them about, they take a lot of people to dialysis 3 times a week. Those are their biggest patient load, are people on dialysis. And they said they noticed an extreme jump in dialysis. Now I'm going to give you what this Kidney Foundation site says causes kidney disease. They said people who have kidney disease, they believe that it's caused from diabetes and high blood pressure. Now, 37 million people in the United States have some sort of kidney disease. And in 2016, 726,521 Americans had kidney failure. So it's a big jump in kidney failure, kidney disease, which I believe is caused by mycoplasma. And again, people, they're blaming diabetes on kidney disease. And again, it's all related, just different places in the body. And I promise this is the very last statistic. This is about heart disease. And if you listen to my heart disease podcast, mycoplasma can be the cause of heart disease indirectly. And heart disease is the #1 killer in America. And 610,000 people every year die of heart disease. And more than half of the sufferers of heart disease are men. Now, the country with the highest rate of heart disease is Russia. Really surprising. The lowest are these countries: Iceland, New Zealand, Austria, and Portugal. So now comes the part about the solution. This is my take on it. Of course, if you want to stay well and protect yourself from cancer and disease, don't share body fluids with people you don't know unless you're monogamous, unless you're married to that person, because that is how the #1 way mycoplasma is being spread right now, through the sharing of body fluids. You can look at a person and think they're totally healthy, but if you share body fluids with them, you may get sick. And if your spouse is sick, you also need to get treated for mycoplasma because you've been infected. And, it's just part of it, So another thing is, try to cut back on sugar. If you have a mycoplasma infection, one of the most important things to do is cut out any kind of sugar. Look up the ketogenic diet on my website. I will be doing a podcast on that. I don't know when, but sugar is absolutely necessary for mycoplasma to survive in your body. And the ketogenic diet absolutely cuts out sugar. And that is why people who go on the ketogenic diet get well. Watch the movie Forks Over Knives about how the people reverse their heart disease and other diseases by giving up sugar and going to a plant-based diet. Also, there's many protocols that kill mycoplasma. The #1 on my list is mild silver protein. And the 2nd and 3rd and 4th and 5th, I did a podcast on the flu pandemic of 2020. And I guess it's kind of misleading, the title, but I give you the top 5 protocols that kill mycoplasma, especially where the Spanish flu is concerned, in the lungs. And please listen to that podcast. It's most informative on the protocols that kill mycoplasma. Some of these are berberine, which is found in golden seal, oil of oregano, and surprisingly, cinnamon. Another one that contains berberine is bloodroot. Bloodroot's a little bit hard to come by unless you know somebody that makes it the correct way with zinc. Also, raw garlic kills mycoplasma. Also, a biomat will kill mycoplasma because the biomat gets up to 150 degrees and mycoplasma die at 150 degrees. Also, you could get a Rife machine or a company that sells a zapper. It's called bestzapper.com. That I have one of those and it works pretty good. There's a lot of testimonies on that. So again, the most important thing to do is be careful who you share body fluids with. You could get infected, and there's nothing worse, trust me, there's nothing worse than being sick. And this is the last thing I'm going to add before signing off. It is all about knowledge. Educate yourself how to protect yourself from cancer and disease. With all these statistics, you have seen cancer and disease rise. More people are sick than in 2014, and the numbers keep growing. So until next time, good night and God bless.